Today I'll be tying an EP fiber baitfish. This is a pattern that was new to me. A customer contacted me and asked if I could tie this for him to imitate sardines as he was fishing in Baja. And here's a couple of pictures of the fish they caught. So you notice that they're very big, and these are the flies that I tied for him. So this one has hackle for the tail, and he liked those for the small ones, and then for the longer body I just tied with EP fibers. And that's what I'll tie today. I'll be tying in a different color, but it's a multi-step fly, and it takes a little time to tie. So let me start with the hook and the vise. This is a saltwater hook. That's important when you're fishing in the salt. The Gamakatsu SL120, a 12S in size 2/0. For the thread, I just have some white Danville, and I'll begin the thread on the hook. Though this is a 3-step fly to create the body with EP fibers. And I'll come back to the point of the hook. I separate visually into thirds. So I'm going to use this for the tail, this for a body, and this for a head. And it's important that you do that. I'll be using 2 different hanks of fibers for each of those. And this fly can get bulky very quickly if you use too much, and I'll hopefully be able to show that to you. So the first material, I wanted to mention I'll be using I'm going to make a 2-tone. So this is called a sculpin color, and the bottom is baitfish belly. But in the middle here, I'm going to have an olive color. And that's what this is. So this is a golden olive EP 3D fibers. And it comes in a hank like this. When you pull it out, it's all loose. And what I did was when I pulled it out the first time, just use a zip tie around the end. If you pull this out, you'll never get it back in the package. So that's an important tip. You can see I've already pre-selected and cut these. And so that makes it much easier and much faster than just to reach over and grab one of the lengths. So I want this about in half, and I'll make a loose wrap. And wrap forward a little bit. And turn it over. And I'll now use some baitfish belly. You can see some sparkle in that. And I have a long section here. So I will do the same. I'll just get it in half. Make a couple of loose wraps. Make sure it's on the bottom and that it's equally distributed through the hook. I'll just try to fold that back and wrap back to the tie-in point that I made with the others. And before I do anything, I will make sure I have this separated because I want to fold these back. As I fold it back, I pull it out of the vise so I can put the material through the hook so it's evenly distributed on each side. And now I will bind these down. Make a couple of wraps, make sure it's where I want it. It is. And so I will wrap that forward. and come in front. So this is the start of my tail and the body of the fly. Now I will use some sculpin color. This is multicolored. And it's called Sculptifly 3D. Again, these are just EP fibers. And I have a similar hank of this already pre-cut. So I'll put it over the top. You notice it's just on top of the hook, or kind of around the hook. Make a soft wrap, make sure it's evenly distributed around the top, on the top 180 degrees. And I will wrap that forward a little bit. Again, I'll remind you that I'm working in thirds. So I want to fill this 1/3. And we'll turn this over. And I have another hank of that baitfish. Make sure it's evenly distributed on either side of the hook. And we'll place a couple of soft wraps. And now I'll start to bind it down. I'm wrapping back to the tie-in point of the sculpin that I just put in. As I bring this, I'll turn the fly over and pull this hank so I make sure that I have the top and the bottom. I'll repeat the process of just taking the fly out so I can pull them back through the point of the hook. And make sure that the sculpin olive is on top of the hook. And now I'll bind this down tightly and come forward. So I have a little finger comb here that I use, and you can blend those fibers together a little bit. You're starting to see the shape of the fish come together there. The next step, I'll create some of the body. I want to create a little bit of bulk along this side now. So these, you could continue exactly what I did, and you would have a fairly narrow body fish. It would look like this, but I want to create a little bit of bulk. So I've used one of those long hanks and just cut it in half. And now I will take this and pull it on, or put it on the bottom, lift it up, just make sure I have the ends about even, and I'll pull it back, and with my thread we'll wrap that in place. And this will be along the side. I'll do exactly the same with the baitfish belly. Make sure those ends are kind of close, and make sure it's on either side. And secure that and wrap forward. So you can see that it's adding some bulk along the side. I've wrapped forward. I want to do that again. Exactly the same technique. And turn it over, and we'll add another one on the bottom. Make sure it's on either side of the hook. And now we're into the last part. So you notice how this is wider. And I'll speak more to that in a minute when I finish the fly. I have one more section, and we're going to place that on top. Actually, I have two more sections, but pulled one out. So I want that to be around the hook. And I'll do the same with a similar amount. Make sure it's on either side of the hook. And I'm wrapping back now. Much like before, we'll pull those back, separate them. And wrap. I have one more section. We'll do the same thing. And wrap this backwards. And do the same section with the bottom now. Making sure that those are tight. I'll separate it like I did before. Pull them back and make some secure wraps to hold it in place. And start to build a little bit of a head. And that's the first section of this fly. I'm just going to whip finish, and we'll trim our thread and head to the second part. For the next step of this fly, we'll begin to trim it to shape. So I'll use my little brush and pull these fibers out. And I take a larger pair of scissors to begin my cutting. Let me get my trash receptacle underneath. So I'll start to trim the top as well as the tail of the fly. And we'll flip it over. You can see the short fibers and the long fibers. In my tail material, I'll make the belly of the fly here. And flip it over. I'd like to have the belly be just a little bit shorter than the back of the fly. So when I pull this down, it starts to look natural. And be careful when you're trimming, because you can trim so much that you don't have a fly left, so it's a little dangerous. And you notice I'm cutting rounded segments here. So as the fly gets pushed back by the water, then that should pull down. Let's work on the belly here. I like to expose the hook just so the material isn't caught up, but we'll do it carefully here. I'm cutting at an angle upward. And let's look and see how that is. Be careful, that's a really sharp hook. Okay, I think I'll stop there. And I will put the hook back in the vise and we'll go to the next step. For the next step, I'm going to use some monofilament thread. I think this is 0.006. I'd like to just build up this head a tiny bit before I put on any UV resin. I used white thread. You can use the monofilament to tie the fly, and I have in the past. I've had problems with this spool breaking. I don't know if it's the diameter or it's a little bit old and it's starting to break, which is why I started tying with white thread. For lighter colored flies, you might be able to just use the white thread and be fine. So that's just build up the head a little bit, and I'll whip finish that. And trim it. Let me reach around and get my UV lamp, and I will start with some SOLAREZ. This is bone dry. You can see that. I'll coat the head with this, and that should secure all of that, the monofilament threads, so it will be a strong fly. And we'll go ahead and cure that. I'll be putting on eyes next. And there's a variety of eyes that you can use for this fly. I think that what I will use is some holographic. These are 5/16. These have worked pretty well for me. Get some out of the package here. And they just come on a strip, and we'll pry those off. The other choices are some smaller flies, eyes, and larger eyes. And you can see that these have a little bit of a teardrop to them. So some eyes are rounds, others are more oblong. I don't know if it makes a difference, but if you're trying to emulate baitfish, you might look at the real bug or the real fish and see what their eyes look like. Now you notice I'm just going to pull these off. There's a paper back that I don't want to come off with it, so they have a little stick to them, but I will be using some Zap gel and used for this. We'll open this up and actually get out my paper towel just so I'm ready for this in case it comes out too fast, but we'll get a pretty good section here. And then I'll take my eye and put the glue right on the eye. And then with my bodkin, I can use it to place it exactly where I want. Hold down and slide that out. So I'll do that for the other side as well. I'll get some more Zap gel here. Super glue. We'll put the lid on this time. And I'll get this other eye and attach it with my bodkin. This is a technique that works really well. Now you notice there's a little bit of an opening right here, and that's caused by when I put the last two segments on top and bottom. So it leaves a little bit of room, and that's where I want to be able to put that super glue type gel, Zap gel. And then before it dries too much, I can look on the top. Whoops. Look on the top and make sure that the flies are aligned pretty much. This one I'll put a little bit forward. And then you can just press for a second. And that should hold those. Now it's best to let those sit for a few minutes. And if you have another fly to tie, you can go ahead at this point. I'll stop for the video for a moment, and once that has set just a little bit, then we'll go to the next step. This has got a nice applicator to it, and I'll start by just putting it, see if it's all the way down or not. I might have to squeeze it a second. Here it comes. And I'll just dab around. I want to go around the eye. And I'll do that on the other side as well. This adds some security to the fly. I don't know if this is needed, honestly, but I think that it would, if I'm coating it with some UV, it might help. So I'm going all the way to the point right behind the eye of the hook. And I'll stop there for a second and go ahead and set that. I'm trying to get this fly to be as strong as possible, and I hope that this UV resin will allow it to do that. By putting it around the eye, I think it will make it secure. That zap should hold it as well, but sometimes if you got a big fish and some sharp teeth, it might in fact pull those off. So let's see if this works. And then I want to go back up into between the eyes a little bit. And I'll dab it, trying to get it into some of the fibers. And I'll do that on the bottom as well. I'll pull these back a little bit. And you can see those tiny fibers now. So let's see if I can push those down. I have these paper towels, just regular paper towels that I've cut into little squares. So in case I need it, I can do exactly what I'm doing here. I've got I have it handy so that I can use it if I need to at a moment's notice here. So the good thing about UV resin is you can work with it for a while and then go ahead and set it. So let's do that now. And this will be our last step. Actually, I'm going to put a dab of UV resin on the eye. I'll do that now. You may not need to do this, but if you've got some fingerprints and you want to keep your eyeball nice and clear, then I found that this seems to work really well. And that bone dry is super good for that. So this is the EP streamer fly. And I've yet to catch a bull trout with one of these, but I need to try a little bit more. I think it's a real fishy looking fly. It's got a few steps, takes a little while to tie, but I think it'll be worth it in the long run. So let me push here. You can see that it's got some flexibility, and that has created some bulk around the side. And I think that will push some water like a natural fish would do as it's swimming. And maybe the lateral lines of the fish you're trying to target will hear that, so to speak, and eat your fly. So I hope you like this. There will be a fly pattern sheet, a link to the fly pattern sheet down below in the description. Please like and subscribe to my YouTube channel, and I hope to see you in the near future.